Welcome to Estate Planning Beyond the Binder.
Hello and welcome back to Estate Planning Beyond the Binder with Brian Chu, managing partner at OC Wills and Trusts and a leading estate planning attorney serving Orange County families for over 25 years. I'm Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're talking about Medi-Cal planning, specifically how you can protect your home and assets and still qualify for long-term care coverage. Brian, welcome back.
Thank you, Kevin.
So for those who don't know, just kind of come across our show here and don't really understand what I'm talking about here, what exactly is Medi-Cal and how does it relate to long-term care for seniors in California?
Well, thank you. Medi-Cal is a government-run insurance program that helps pay for a couple different type of things. And as you mentioned, one of the biggest ones is what's called long-term care. When somebody needs to go to a nursing home and doesn't have enough assets to pay for a nursing home. The average cost of a nursing home in Orange County right now is around $10,000 a month. Okay.
Wow.
And Medicare is an example.
Isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's here, one thing to understand, a nursing home is slightly different than what we call boarding care or assisted living. Okay. A nursing home is when a doctor says you need to be in a facility where you're being monitored 24/7 by a nurse and or a doctor. Okay. If you're just being assisted, if you need assistance with eating or feeding, bathing, those type of things, that's not a nursing home. That's because an orderly can do that. And thus that's assisted living. And so, currently there's limited, if any, benefits for assisted living. But if you require a nursing home and don't have enough money, our program in California is called Medi-Cal. In other states, it's called Medicaid. But in California, it's referred to as Medi-Cal. And Medi-Cal is what we consider the payer of last resort. Okay. After exhausting all your money, which presumably would be Social Security at that point, if that's not enough to cover the cost of a nursing home and you don't have enough money, typically less than $2,000 at the end of each month, you will qualify potentially for Medicaid or Medi-Cal in this case, and the government will cover the rest.
I think a lot of families worry that they have to spend down on everything or spend down everything to qualify. Is that the case generally?
There's a number of exempt assets. So the basic qualification is $2,000 in financial assets, and that's everything. Cash, stocks, bonds, pretty much anything you would have access to cash-wise would count against that total. Okay, but again, but you can own things still. You can own a home. That's the biggest one. And you can continue to own that home. You can own a car. Obviously, most of your personal possessions, unless we're talking about gold bars or something like that, you can have, for the most part, relatively unlimited personal possessions. Okay, and the most common way to get qualified, if somebody has too much money, is to what they call spend down, which means spending money on things you might need, paying off loans, paying off the mortgage, and if that brings your assets down to 2,000, your financial assets down to 2,000, that's how you potentially qualify for the Medi-Cal nursing home benefit.
What is the Medi-Cal look back period? Like how far back do they check financial records?
So that's the big thing. You cannot just make yourself poor. All right? You have $200,000 today, and let's say you give the $198,000 to your kids. That doesn't work because Medi-Cal in California, we have a 30-month look back, which is far shorter than other states, which is 60 months. In California, it's 30 months, which means any financial transaction you've done over the last 30 months, Medi-Cal has the right to know that you've done it. And if they see you gave away money to somebody, you gave away something for less than fair market value. Let's say you had a rental home, which would be countable as an asset, and you just transfer that house to somebody else, they will count that as a gift, and that will penalize you for up to that 30-month look-back period. So any transaction with 30 months can disqualify you for up to 30 months for the Medi-Cal benefit.
What other than that sounds like a mistake someone would make of trying to kind of skirt the system there. But what are some of the other common mistakes you see people make when they're trying to protect their assets, or maybe protect them too late?
So, the interesting thing is that people think you can't have a house when you're trying to qualify Medi-Cal, and then they give the house away to the kids. So, and the issue there is they didn't need to give the house away to the kids. They could have kept the house as long as they put it into a revocable living trust. And that's the other aspect of this is it's one thing. So there's two issues with Medi-Cal. There's qualifying for Medi-Cal, and then there's the Medi-Cal estate recovery lien. And they are two separate things. Again, you could have a house, and it doesn't matter whether you own or a trust owns it. That house doesn't count against you. But some people will think the house counts against me, so they'll give it to their kids. And yes, that deals with both issues. You don't have to worry about, it doesn't count against you, and there's no estate recovery lien. But as I've mentioned in past podcasts, giving the house to the kids while you're alive is a potential tax issue for them that you didn't need to do. That's why it would typically be better for you to keep the house, put it into a revocable trust. By putting in a revocable trust, that house will not go to probate. And if your house does not go to probate, the state will not put a lien on any of your house through the probate process. Because if you don't have a trust and the house goes to probate, during the probate process, your executors will have to go to Medi-Cal and ask, did you use any benefits over the course of your lifetime? And if you use benefits, Medi-Cal will submit its bill and they'll want their money paid back. And presumably that'll be paid back from the sale of the house, and they'll get paid first or with the rest of the creditors. So that's why we want to, that's probably the biggest mistake we see. The other is, if you, just transferring the assets, if it's accountable assets like cash, again, that you can't just make yourself instantly poor. And that will set you back, depending on how much you give, the full 30 months potentially.
Okay. What is estate recovery?
Good thing, and again, this is different from every state. In California, we have some of the most forgiving laws when it comes to estate recovery, because up until recently, it's if somebody died and they used Medi-Cal, whether it be the Medi-Cal insurance benefit or the long-term care nursing home benefit, when that person died, Medi-Cal would send a questionnaire to the family and say, did they have any money or assets at the end? And if they did, we want our money back. Now, what people didn't realize was that was a voluntary questionnaire, and people would answer it not knowing that they didn't have to answer it, and thus, they ended up paying Medi-Cal back. The government decided to fix that system, make it a little more fair in the sense of only the people who are completely uninformed would actually answer the questionnaire. And so now the recovery lien only happens during the probate process. And probate would only happen if you had assets like a home that was not in a trust and wasn't, didn't have other joint owners. Or B, you had a financial account that had no benefit, that was owned by an individual, not by a trust, and there was no living beneficiary or trust name as the beneficiary of that account. In which case that account might go to probate. And during the probate process, that's when the state would submit its bill for any Medi-Cal benefits that were paid on behalf of the person who died. But otherwise, It doesn't happen.
Okay.
And that's the biggest, again, misconception people have is that it used to be we had to do irrevocable trusts to avoid the estate recovery lien if you owned a home. Now a revocable trust is sufficient.
What kind of tools or strategies can help someone preserve their assets while planning for care in the right way?
That one's a tougher one because, it's a balance. Sure. Obviously, as I always tell people, when it comes to long-term care, obviously it's about planning. Okay, when did you plan for it? Most people in their 50s and 60s should be planning for long-term care. And there's obviously a number of financial vehicles, insurance, and otherwise that people should be doing to account for how am I going to pay for these things. Because a lot of people, when they come and they think about, how much money do I need to live on? They're thinking about what they're living on right now. Your regular rent, or paying for a house and food and whatever it is. And they're not accounting for how expensive long-term care, would be assisted living, boarding care, or nursing home, how expensive that's going to be. And so part of it's initially, obviously, financial planning. Do you have the wherewithal to pay for those things? And, to be honest, if it's me, as much as it'd be nice for the government to pay for nursing home as an example, I don't know whether if I have enough money, I don't know I want to subject. Yes, I'd like to preserve the assets of my kids, but I'm not sure if I want to subject myself to the Medi-Cal system or what facilities would be available to me that accept Medi-Cal, because not all nursing homes take Medi-Cal. Obviously, the nicer ones don't. Places with better food or better locations, because there's only so many Medi-Cal beds. I mean, typically in South Orange County, where I'm at, there are very few Medi-Cal beds available. You have to go elsewhere outside the area to find a Medi-Cal bed. So the first question is, do you want nursing home to pay? Do you want the government paying for it and be subject to the Medi-Cal system? And then also realizing Medi-Cal is, nursing home is the last step. What about the interim, assisted living? Again, government outside of, unless you're a veteran, there's very limited benefits, if any, to pay for assisted living. So you're paying out of pocket. So again, there needs to be a financial plan and how that can be paid for. And obviously, the more you pay, the better facility that you can afford.
Sure. Yeah.
But beyond that, there are ways if you're looking at the nursing home benefit. But the problem is that we don't know whether, while there's a pretty reasonable chance we'll need a nursing home benefit, it probably won't be that long. Unfortunately, once we get to that point, people, I think the average lifespan is about 6 months versus assisted living could be many years. So, you're looking at a nursing home, how much control of your assets are you willing to give up? In this case, give it to the kids typically in advance, 30 months typically, even though, except that's why it's 30 months. Am I going to know 30 months when I'm in a nursing home? Yeah, a handful of people might, but the vast majority will not know.
Right.
And then once we give the money to the kids, it's over. In terms of our control of those assets, we're trusting our kids. And, especially if we give it to our kids, what if our child passes away and now they don't do their own estate plan that takes care of us as the parent. And now that money goes to their spouse, who we may not have the same relationship with. And so, there's all kinds of issues. And that's where, we start talking about irrevocable trusts and things like that is a potential way to give, but not completely give assets to our kids. They don't count as our asset, but they, the kids would have control of it. And there's some backup plans in there in case something happens to our children before us. So that's a typical tool that we might use to potentially qualify for a benefit. Again, with a fair amount of foresight. So again, an irrevocable trust does not solve the same issue, which is the look back period. You transfer an asset to an irrevocable trust, you're subject to the same look back period. So again, this does have to be planned in advance. But again, the question is, how soon are you ready to give up control of your assets? And for a benefit you may never need.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Like, how early should someone start considering Medi-Cal, start planning for it?
Again, it's kind of tough because, again, the Medi-Cal is for the nursing home. Again, it's a nursing home, and it's hard to predict when we might need that. And so we have different classes of people. Obviously, people who don't have much money, in which case qualifying probably wouldn't be that hard. All right. Or the look back period, if there is one at all, would be pretty short. Then there's people who have a lot of money, which again, they're probably not worried about Medi-Cal and they'll self-fund. It's those people kind of in the middle, those people who are, asset rich, cash poor. I guess even those people at some level will qualify because they can own a home. It's like I said, it's that 30-month window. And, there's just a lot of factors where you have to look at it. Obviously, if you have some sort of debilitating disease that's likely to result in a nursing home, then you want to start planning as soon as possible. It's definitely a discussion you want to have. You want to talk to a financial advisor and or your estate planner just to to figure out what am I going to need, and because how much do I have, and what's a nursing home or assisted living going to cost? How am I going to pay for that? And that's the issue right now. Is a lot of times the people, when you don't have a lot of money and there isn't a plan, ultimately it's the kids are going to be burdened. And that's assuming you have kids that you can trust and you can rely on, and that are in a position to help take care of you. So it's not an easy thing to figure out, but it is a thing that unfortunately too many people ignore until it's too late.
What does too late mean?
Too late means I need to go. I'm injured and I need to go to assisted living tomorrow. And the thing is, assisted living, if you don't have money, they're not letting you in. So this is not like an issue of, if I don't have any money, I can go to assisted living. So an example, I need, I can't walk, I can't prepare meals. That's not a medical issue necessarily. So that's not a nursing home. And so now, but I need somebody to help me. I can't get out of bed. I need somebody to change me. I need somebody to bathe me. If you don't do some sort of planning around that, and again, because that can happen in an instant, you fall down, and Medicare will cover, obviously, making you better. But if it's this Medicare stops paying, if I'm over 65, Medicare will stop paying as soon as the care isn't making me better anymore. It's just maintaining me. Now Medicare will run out, or 100 days, whichever comes sooner, and now I'm on my own. And that's what people don't realize. And so that's where it's financial planning. But if you can't financially plan, obviously you can't work with what you don't have, and there are no government benefits. Now you've got to, it's what can your family do? because there's just not a lot of other options at that point.
Yeah. For anyone listening who's might be worried about long-term care costs for either them or their loved ones, what's the first step to creating a smart Medi-Cal strategy?
For Medi-Cal, I mean, it's analyzing your assets. Okay. And, what assets can you keep? Your home. And then, your financial assets, which again, if you're trying to qualify for the nursing home benefit, you need to spend down, get down to $2,000. And without giving it away, ideally. And so again, that's where, you look at paying off debts, paying off, the home, especially, because again, the more equity you have in the house doesn't necessarily disqualify you, from the benefit. So that's I think the primary, tool we have is just analyzing your assets. What can you do with them? And then you have to look at who you trust. Who do you trust to take care of you? Because even if we do what we call an irrevocable trust, you are typically no longer the beneficiary of your irrevocable trust. Your kids are. And so while they may be able to take money out and spend it for your benefit, you're counting on them to take money out and spend it for your benefit. So there is no free lunch. Now, the other thing to look at is, good news in California, our laws are a little more relaxed than other states. And, you want to talk to a qualified person, whether it be an attorney or somebody who works within the Medi-Cal system that helps people get qualified. Where are the, what can I keep within the rules? Because, you are subject to audit and stuff. And, obviously you want to keep as much as you can.
Right.
At the end of the day, I mean, you may not need it, and you might be able to use it for other things. And again, once you give the money away, the money's given away and you can't get it back. At least not on your own.
Right.
So,
unless you steal it, I suppose.
Yeah. But you're trusting your kids at that point, typically.
Right.
Or you're trusting, you're trusting somebody to use that money for your benefit, even though they have no legal obligation to do so.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So that's the issue, is that you're to do it, to qualify. And again, the whole point of this is, the government, they don't want people who can afford to pay for their own care not to pay for their own care.
Right.
So they don't make it easy. And so we can look at, what can you do within the framework of the rules, and still try to maintain as much control as you can. But that it's always balancing things, giving up control of assets versus qualifying for benefits. Of course, at the end of the day, worst case scenario, you maintain control of your assets, you spend it down. Yes, your kids won't get the money, but at least I had control.
Right.
And sometimes, and that's why a lot of times, we'll have people come in and say, should I do this? And a lot of times they'll say no. I mean, given the facts and circumstance of your situation, and that's what we're going to look at. Not everybody's the same. There is no one size fits all. What is your situation? And in this case, it's who do you trust today? Yeah. Who do you trust to take care of you? And if you don't have those people, then you just kind of, then as much as I'm sure you'd like somebody to get money after you, that just may not be an option at that point.
Right.
Of course, again, you have a house, they still are going to get the house. So, and for a lot of people, that's our biggest asset.
Yeah, most people, I would say, right? All right. Well, with the right strategy, Medi-Cal can work for you, not against you. To learn more, visit ocwillsandtrusts.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like our videos. We very much appreciate it. Brian, I always appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being here.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.